many times do you dwell through your evenings or your nights where you can't sleep and you're going back and forth because you're worried? You're worried about what will happen. What if? It always seems to be something that's on our minds. We worry about the future. We don't seem to live in the present. And today we're going to be talking about this. Welcome to Let's Get Real. Welcome to 2024. And let's get real today with our other host, Nicole Harvick, and myself, Glenda Kroll. We're here to educate you, to make you think, and to actually bring other people into your life that will help you to maybe get rid of that worry, things that you maybe think of. Why do we waste so much time in our life worrying about things that we don't have any control? Nicole, do you worry at nights?
You know what? I don't. I have been practicing surrender for several years now. And for me, that's just, it's not giving up. A lot of people, go to the dictionary and say, oh, well, I'm not doing that. That's giving up. And it's really not. What you're doing is you're actually surrendering to a higher power, a higher knowledge, your higher self. And, it's so interesting. We really don't have control over much in our life. We don't know that. We often don't know that, but we really don't. So learning to live in the moment and learning to live to surrender, for me, it's very, very important because it gives me just a sense of security, knowing that I'm letting something a little bit higher than me take it over. And, I could walk out the door and something could happen that I have no control over. So no, I don't worry at night. I sleep very well. How about you?
Well, I've lived through my life with so many things that have gone through my life that I always believe it will always work out, because it always does.
Yeah.
So I have a different, instead of sort of surrendering, I have faith. Faith knowing that I'm going to find the right people or the right things or everything that will work out, does work out in my life. And that's been for so many years. So at this point in life, I just sort of let it be. And I always sort of, I don't know, my mind sort of goes towards a goal, what I'm setting forth, what do I need to do? And then it just seems to happen. So it's just the way my brain thinks. So
and that's awesome, because whatever you're thinking about, as within, so without, that mind's got that power to create for you. So you're set.
And it does.
Yeah.
So let's introduce our guest today, because this is the conversation that we need to be having.
And I'm excited about our guest today. And for over a decade, Martin Salama, he's the architect of the Warrior's Life Code, and that's L.I.F.E. So we got an acronym coming up. He's been helping entrepreneurs shift from worry and lack to abundance and being a life warrior. And I think we need that shift really desperately coming into 2024. This is a whole different ballgame this year. Why spend your time worrying when you can be living incredibly full every day? And I think that is an incredible statement, because most people don't. So let's bring Martin to the stage, Glenda.
Hello, Martin, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, ladies. Glenda, Nicole, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you, and a wonderful new year it's going to be.
Oh, it is going to be fantastic. So happy to be here with you, ladies, starting off the new year on such a great platform. Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited. We're excited to talk to you and hear all your bits of wisdom.
It's such an important topic, because too many people spend their lives worrying instead of actually living, instead of doing something. And we have control over a very small amount of things in our life. And if you spend that time worrying about what ifs and maybe and I should have's, like I always say to people, you're shitting yourself to death, and it's true. So let's just go a little bit of give us a little bit of history about you. Were you a warrior? It's a warrior?
Yeah, well, I was a warrior. I was a huge warrior. And a lot of that kind of got built into me as I was a child growing up. because I found myself looking back now, I recognize that I was a people pleaser.
Mm.
And those are some of the things that being a worrier is part of what being a people pleaser is about. For me, thank God over the last 10, 12 years, I've unpacked those things of my life and understood. Most people pleasers don't even realize that they are people pleasers until somebody points it out to them and says, oh yeah, that's what you're doing. You're looking for the validation. You're looking for the recognition. You take things personally. For me, that was me. I was a control freak. And when everything wasn't going my way, I would lose it. I would, have the shortest temper you can imagine. I would explode, kind of like even like a nuclear reactor. That's how much I would react. I would leave fallout all over the place that I have to come back and, clean up later. And most of the times that came to be like, I'm sorry I did that, Glenda, but you got me going. You did this, you did that.
It's easier to blame somebody else, right?
Exactly. And, I would rationalize that the things I was doing was right because, I was always right. I had to be in control. I had to be the one. And I've come to learn, and I've kind of like even trademarked this, that rationalize is really two words: rational lies. You lie to yourself that it's rational to do things that go against yourself, go against your inner belief, because it's for the greater good, or because you're feeding your ego, or you're helping somebody else. But when deep down inside, it's not really what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Wow. And just when you're talking about that, and I see this all over the place. I mean, I still see this in society, the big eruptions and people taking everything so personally. So what was your catalyst to finally look in the mirror and realize you might be the problem?
Yeah. So it started in 2008. You ladies probably remember what happened in 2008.
Oh, yes, quite well, unfortunately.
Yeah. So my wife and I were working on a project for 5 years to build a multi-million-dollar health club and tennis center in New Jersey.
Mm.
And that even came about because in 2002, 2003, I was closing a business. And my wife said to me, I can never find tennis courts to play. They're all booked up all the time, and I'm never able to find any courts. Maybe that's a good business you could go into now, and we'll do it together. So I got to tell you, ladies, I'm not an athlete. I've never been an athlete. You could even call me an athletic supporter. But I was like, deep down inside, it was the people pleaser telling me, okay, let's see where this will take us. So we start doing the research, and we find out that we do a feasibility study, and the guy tells us, it's great you want to build tennis courts. There is a need for the courts, but I got to tell you, you're not going to make a lot of money just doing tennis. You've got to have other things like a health club and a gym and all those other things. Before we knew it, and it took us 5 years because we had to we had to find the land. Then we had to get the architect. Then we had to go to the city, and they go, oh, you got to go do a civil engineering to make sure that the parking is good and the traffic, study and all that. So that took us 5 years. And if it was 2006 or 2007, I would go into the bank and they would tell me, yeah, we'll give you the money. Back then, in 2006, 2007, the money world was like, it was kind of like going to Costco.
Yeah.
They'll give you samples on every
with just a handshake.
Right. That's it. I mean, I refinanced my house a couple of times. I was like, oh yeah, we'll just revaluate. So by the time I got to 2008, I was about 3 million plus into this project.
Wow.
And we finally got the approvals in the summer of 2008. I go to the bank and they go, yeah, we're not lending. I'm like, what do you mean? Last year you told me come back. And well, that was last year. Things are not the same. Things are really starting to tighten up now. I didn't know what was going on. A month later, Bernie Madoff, subprime loans, the world falls apart like a house of cards.
Yeah.
And you know who I was? I was the Joker on the bottom of the cards. And I wasn't laughing because I lost everything overnight.
It was really ugly. It was very ugly. My ex was a hard money lender across the United States. I'll tell you what, it was like a blink of the eye, and it was done. Done. I understand totally what you're talking about, and it's devastating.
It was for me. I stopped paying my mortgage. I stopped paying my car payments. A couple of months later, my son tells me, Dad, look outside. They were towing away my BMW. That never happened to me before.
Yeah.
The house went into foreclosure. Luckily, I guess you could say, luckily, I lived in New Jersey. They were so backed up in foreclosures that it took them years until they finally acted on the foreclosure.
Wow.
Right. But we lost it all. And I went into a depression for about a year. And looking back now, it was just obviously a situational depression. I lost everything. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I was going through therapy and even coaching. And one day I said to myself, you know what? I don't want to be in business anymore. I'm tired of being a businessman. I've been doing that my whole life.
Yeah.
So what do I want to do? I thought about it, and I realized I was always great at being a leader in my community organizations.
Mm.
And as a leader, you're really showing other people what their potentials are. So that led me down the path of becoming a life coach. And that's what I decided to do. And about 2 months before life coaching training was going to start, it was my 24th wedding anniversary. And my wife said to me, I'm done. I want a divorce. I'm like, there's 365 other days she could have told it.
Oh.
But and maybe I should have said to her, but I didn't get you anything like that for our anniversary.
Yeah, exactly.
You can imagine how I felt.
Oh,
Here
sure.
I am. And I said to myself, I remember saying to myself, why does everything keep happening to me? And that, looking back now, again, as one of me realizing, me saying that was me blaming everybody else in the world.
Yeah.
Now I say, why everything happens through me. It doesn't happen to me. It happens through me. That's me taking responsibility for what's going on. Whereas before I didn't. But I said, you know what? God is sending me a message. He's telling me, oh yeah, you want to go to life coaching? Maybe you should figure out yourself first. And that's
Yeah.
where I started to learn that I was a people pleaser and all those other things. And looking back now, it was probably the best gift other than my 4 children she ever gave me.
Yeah, that's when I had that happen to me, those things, instead of victimizing myself and why me, I reframe it. What did I learn? What did I need to learn? What can I do now with that knowledge? So, I'll tell you, and the 3 of us, we've all been divorced. So Glenda, as well as
and it's sort of like I looked at it always of what I learned from everything that has happened, because everything that comes to us is there to teach us a lesson.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And instead of crumbling, it was always that I always said I didn't have the time in my life to schedule, a breakdown. So I just had to keep on going.
You didn't put it in your schedule.
Put in my calendar, so I didn't have time for it. So create me to have that power, that resilience, that I didn't allow myself to crumble and fall away. It was just moving forward. And as I moved forward, I sort of picked up the pieces and figured it out along the way.
Right.
And
I get that. Yeah.
Very, when, I as with you, I coach a lot of people, and a lot of people fall and they don't want to get up. They crumble. And it's when you're crumbling, it's like what you're saying, why me? Why does everything always happen to me? And it's the, as my friend and I call it, it's the pity party. How long are you going to have a pity party? Now, it's important to have some form of a pity party, like feel the pain. Something's going on in your life. You can't swap it off and not feel it, but you need to feel something so you can understand it. When you feel the sadness, then when you hit your low, and now it's time to move forward.
Yep, exactly right. No question about it. People think going to life coaches means, oh, you're always going to be happy, never anger, never sad. No, it's not that at all. It's how to deal with it when those things come up. Exactly. For me, like I said, I was a reactor. So I had to learn how to not react anymore and learn how to respond. And, that first weekend when I went to coach training, they said, you don't have to be who you think you have to be. Yeah. You could be whoever you want to be. I was like, oh, wow. And before that weekend, they gave us a bunch of books to read. And one of them, they said, read a couple of the books on this list. One of them was The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
We all love that book. Oh, yeah.
God.
It's the best. I read
it was a life changer.
Every year.
It was a life changer. It's right here on my bookshelf. And for me, the second agreement, don't take anything personally, I felt like he
Power.
was telling me, he was talking directly to me, telling me a secret that I had heard my entire life, but I wasn't ready to hear it until that moment. And I was like, wait a minute. I don't have to take everything personally. The world doesn't have to be on my shoulders. And that's when things started to change. And I went into that coaching with that mindset of like, okay, like you said, Glenda, what can I learn from this? How can I move forward? And look, we were both victims and we were both culprits to the failure of the marriage. I needed to take my responsibility for what my things were that I was doing wrong in the marriage, that I did wrong, not to save the marriage, because that was gone. It was to save myself so that I could move forward and have a happy life.
Right. And learn from that so that you don't repeat that, and the same thing with the marriage of the person, like, because what ends up happening, a lot of people end up attracting the same person because they never learned from the first time.
Exactly right. And I came out of coach training as a divorce recovery coach because I said, if I don't fix myself, I'm going to end up marrying the same woman in a different body.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I used to tell that to my clients all the time.
And it's true. It's very true. After I was divorced from my husband, the person that I reconnected with was someone from high school. And as I stood back and reflected, I'm like, oh my gosh, I picked the same type every single time. And it was just like a light bulb. So now it's just me, myself, and I.
It's a good group to be involved with. I have the same group too. I love it.
Well, luckily for me, after my divorce, a woman reached out to me from my community. I come from a very small, close-knit Jewish community here in Brooklyn, New York. Mm-hmm. And she reaches out to me, and somebody I know my whole life. She was actually one of my wife's best friends when they were younger. She goes, now that you're divorced, are you ready to start dating again? I'm like, Kelly, you're married. She goes, not me. She goes, I'm like, oh, okay. She goes, I'm your matchmaker. I'm like, my what? What is this, Fiddler on the Roof?
Yeah, exactly.
She goes, no. When guys and girls, men and women are getting divorced or they're single and they haven't gotten married, we have an organization in our community where we help people date. So I said, I don't know if I'm ready. We talked for about an hour. And at the end of the conversation, she said, I never met a guy who was so well put together after a divorce like you. I said, I guess it's my coaching. And she's the one that encouraged me to become a divorce recovery coach. So I did that. And, that was how I started. And I understood what my values now were going through coach training. And she would match me up with women. And when I'd go out, I would kind of like interview them as to what their values were, because I realized there was a codependent relationship the first time and I didn't want that again. But they didn't know I was interviewing them. It was just part of the conversation. And one day she sets me up with this woman. She says, you got to take her out. I'm telling you, she's great. I was like, okay, Kelly, you're the one. I've been 5 years I'm here, but okay. And during that time, I did a lot of work on myself. So I was really ready at that moment. And we go out on the date and she's checking off all the boxes. I'm like, okay, this is good. Go again. About a month into it, I tell her, Sarita, I got to tell you something. We're going out a month and I got to tell you something. And I don't need to hear it from you, but I'm falling in love with you because I love who you are and who you see me as, and you're not trying to change me. It took her about 2 weeks and she told me she loved me too. And we've been married for over 5.5 years.
Congratulations.
Not 2 years, but we got married 5.5 years now.
Now I'm just curious, had she done work on herself like you had to do work on yourself?
Well, she was divorced and had children of her own. Mm-hmm. Right. She had done some work, not to the depth that I had. In her situation, I think it was more of he was the problem than she was. But I never got into the depths of it because she never wanted to share it, which was fine with me. Mm-hmm. But I saw those values. And it's funny because when this woman, Kelly, called me up to tell me about her, I'm like, okay, well, I know a lot of the women in the community. I don't know this woman. Well, she goes, Ralph and Cookie? I'm like, yeah. I know Ralph.
That sounds like cartoon characters.
Right. Well, Cookie's my mom is her mother's nickname.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I know Ralph and Cookie. Ralph's friends with my sister Linda, who's 10 years older than me. Cookie's friends with my sister Nancy, who's 7 years older than me. I know them very well. Well, it's their daughter. I'm like, their daughter? Okay. Well, how old is she? Well, she's 15 years younger than you. Well, if she wants to go out with me, I'm in. I'll take a date with a woman 15 years younger than me. And the rest is history.
That's awesome. That's a great story. That's
you.
a great, and you know what? The best part, it's happy ending. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. So that's where I am now. I mean, I took a lot of work on myself, as we talked about earlier. And I went through different ups and downs, even after the divorce, even going through coaching. And then I said, you know what? I've got to figure this out. I've got to stop rationalizing, like I said earlier, all the reasons why I can't and whatever. And I needed to shift that mindset from I can't to how can I, or even better, I can.
Okay. And that's exactly what it is. And people don't realize, the term mindset is used very loosely these days. Everything talks about mindset. But people really don't realize is how you think of things is how it really appears in your life.
Yep. No question about it.
So we get people that are the ones that will, no matter what you say, if you suggest things to them, they can never do anything. It's always the negative. Oh, I don't know how, I can't. And that's the negative mindset that just basically destroys lives.
Right. And then you may even get them to say, and this is, a mutual friend of ours will get upset about this. And when she hears this, she'll say, I'll try.
Oh, yeah, we can have that one.
There's a woman that we're all friends with here that if you ever say the word I'll try, you're making a $5 donation to her charity. Our friend Forbes Riley.
Yeah.
You do 15 push-ups.
So 15 push-ups, exactly.
It is even better for you. But exactly. But it's when we have to learn how we talk to ourselves, and I think that's the starting off of everything in life. When even before I take people on as a new client, I like to have a 30-minute time where I just allow them to speak and talk to me, because during that time I can hear how they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's
and
great.
If talking in that tone, it's trying to figure out whether they have the ability, whether they want to change themselves. Right. Because you can't change unless you really set out that you want to change yourself. And the whole idea is knowing that there's all sorts of different ways. As a coach, we all know there's all different tools that we can use to help people to change the way they look at things, to make adjustments in their lives so that they can. But it's really on the attitude. And a lot of times that attitude starts at a very young age.
100%. I know that's how that was for me. I was very young. I had a trauma in my life when I was a 10-year-old child that affected me for the next close to 40 years.
Wow.
You see this picture up here of this little boy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's my brother, Michael. He was 5 and I was 10. And unfortunately he was killed by a school bus.
Oh
my gosh.
And I have 4 older sisters. And for me, when that happened, I was devastated. My parents were beyond devastated, as my sister, the community. But I said to myself at that time, it's my job to make sure that my parents are always happy. And I can pinpoint that time as my defining moment when I began to become that people pleaser who I was for the next 35, 40 years.
Wow. And there is a defining moment. You're right. Good for you for finding it, because it's only upon finding it that we can work with it, deal with it, and release it.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
But that's very traumatic.
Yes. Yeah. There's, nothing harder than to lose a child or a sibling, especially at such a young age.
Yeah.
You don't understand. There's so many questions that are never really answered.
Right. And this was back in the 70s, right? So we understand what that time was like. Yeah. There wasn't therapy. There wasn't like, let's talk about this.
No.
Right. My sisters and I didn't talk about it for 20 years, even though we're Jewish, and we sat for a week and had, condolence calls and sat shiva and all that. But we never discussed what happened and the effects it had on us until 20 years later.
Wow. And that by that time, that trauma is pretty well embedded in everyone.
Yeah.
But I do remember the 70s well. I mean, it's like I think of my parents or my friends parents. We didn't discuss anything. We didn't talk about anything. It happened. And then, you just move on.
Yeah. Well,
How?
I remember, and I want to pay homage to my mother here. She's 91 and a half.
Aw.
Unfortunately, COVID wasn't good for her. She was stuck in the house, stopped driving, stopped playing bridge. So the dementia set in a little faster than it should have. But thank God she's still with us. But, she was in a bad place for a while, of course, losing her baby.
Of course.
And what happened is somebody approached her from our community and said, there are other couple of women who've lost children recently. We'd like to put you together and we'll bring you a counselor so that you can go through this together and have a support group. From that, my mother became a leader in our community for the next 40 years.
Wow.
And they started a support group that grew, unfortunately, as mothers lost children. And she would go to those houses during that week of condolence calls and tell the women, I know how you feel.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows how they feel unless they've lived it.
Yes.
And she said, we're here for you when we're ready, when you're ready. And over the years, women have come to me and said, your mother saved my life.
Oh.
She came to me at my lowest point and brought me in and helped me get through that. So just a moment to pay tribute to my mom.
Yes. And what a hard job, if you will, she took on to care for others, having been through that and having to possibly relive that when, so that sounds like she's absolutely amazing.
She really is. And it's funny because they put together a photo book of seniors in our community a couple of years ago. And my mother's quote is, God gave me big shoulders because I had a lot to carry.
Wow. That's very special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from all of this, you've done a lot of learning in your own life, and that's the greatest teacher of all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you've been able to now take those learnings and put them to some really wonderful use.
Mm-hmm. I have. I'm very proud of where I am in my life. I'm very proud of we talked about, you mentioned live incredibly full every day, which is something that came out of me recognizing after my divorce. I still wallowed in some self-pity for a little while, as we talked about. Yeah. And one day I just needed to change. I looked in the mirror. I was the heaviest I ever was in my life. I said, I got to do something about this. I started exercising. I started reading better. And for a while I was going with, I can't afford to be coached. The problem is nobody could afford to be not coached. You need a coach in your life, especially if you've gone through it. So I started working out, and the guy I was working out, I was doing videos. He said, I'll help you. We have Facebook groups, come into them. You'll have support there. And within 9 months, I lost 65 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you. But what also came with that was a sense of self-worth and self-esteem, which led me to be able to start dating on the right way. And I even started now, ladies, I'm ADHD, right? So getting me to sit still for 2 minutes is hard. Imagine even doing a 10-minute guided meditation. When is this going to be over?
I'm into it 2 minutes. I hate it.
Yep. I hear you.
And the guy's in my head and I still can't stop. And one of these times I had this epiphany, this download of information that I was loving my life and I wanted to help other people do the same thing. And after my 10-minute meditation, I wrote for 2 hours. And that's where the acronym for LIFE came in, live incredibly full every day.
I love it.
Beautiful.
And, what it means to me is it means having a happy life and a meaningful life.
Yeah.
A lot of people can have happy lives with no meaning.
Mm-hmm. And that is so true.
Right. Viktor Frankl, if you've ever read The Man's Search for Meaning. Unbelievable book.
Great book.
And it's about having that balance, because you could be meaningful without being happy. So that's what I try to do every day. Happiness, the happy part is selfish, self-love. The meaningful part is selfless. What are you giving out to the world?
Yeah. And I love the self-love part is so important. And that, for me, that was something I never even thought of for myself. And when I started utilizing forgiveness and that came along, that's a game changer. Self-love is a game changer. And it gives you real eyes to see everyone and everything differently. It's very encompassing as to the good of the world.
Right. And you bring up forgiveness, Nicole, and you need to forgive others, even if they're not looking for forgiveness, and you don't need to forgive them to their face.
This
Right.
is it. This is very important. So
This is our jam, Glenda.
yeah,
Because you can't forgive yourself if you don't forgive others.
exactly. And people just don't get it.
They don't get
about learning to forgive others, and it doesn't matter about them. It takes
Right.
you off the hook so that you don't have that trigger in your life.
Right. That resentment trigger.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so
100%.
many people say, well, forgiveness has to be earned. It's like the person didn't care enough about you to not hurt you. They're not thinking about you today. They're not in any position to earn, nor do they care. But you're still carrying that pain. Why?
Yep. Yeah. They don't
That's a
even know.
conversation. Yeah.
No, yeah.
95% of the time they don't know, they don't care,
No.
but you are still carrying that burden. And it's
Mhm.
about releasing it. I had a guy 4 or 5 years ago sent me a message on LinkedIn who I grew up with. He was literally my first friend. I could look back and, timeline wise, he was my first friend. And he said, Martin, I owe you an apology for all those years in school when me and other kids would pick on you. And I was, now we could look back and say I was bullied. Back then we said I was teased, I was picked on. And I was very sensitive. I would cry all the time. I'd go running looking for my older sister in school. They picked on me.
Yeah.
That was me. That's who I was. And when you leave the last will and testaments in the yearbook,
Yep.
they left me a box of Kleenex tissues.
Oh my God.
Oh,
This
goodness.
guy reached out to me to apologize. He said, I never realized the damage I might have done to you. And I said, and his name happens to be Michael. I said, Michael, I forgave you a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So
And you can forgive and you never have to talk to him. You can forgive and you can never want to see them again.
Right.
So there's a lot of aspects that people don't understand about the power of it and how to do it. And
yeah, absolutely. It happened to me with this gentleman. I saw him a few months later when his father-in-law passed away, and I went to go make a condolence call. We hugged each other. We said, I love you. I love you too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I understand from all these lessons that you have learned that you've written a book.
I have.
Can you tell us about your book and tell us the name? So
Absolutely. It's called Warrior to Warrior.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like it.
There we go. I even put the worry right into, I don't know which way to put the book. There we go.
You got it.
So, and it's literally, I went from being somebody who was worried all the time to being a warrior. And people say, oh, what does that mean? You put on your armor? No. To me, the definition of a warrior is somebody who's gone through adversity and come out the other side stronger for it.
Exactly.
And I've yet to meet somebody who hasn't had adversity.
No such thing.
Not possible.
No, it's not possible. And instead of sitting back and you get the people that it's why me? Well, it's it's all of us. It's just part of what life is all about.
Right. Exactly.
But coming through it is very different.
Yep. So yeah, so I brought out, this book came out in June of 2023.
Mhm.
And a few months before that, I put out this card deck.
Okay.
Right. Which is kind of like, if you read the book, it's a great way to use it to get refreshers. If you haven't read the book, it's a great way to get an idea of what the book would be about. And what I've done is I've taken all these things that I've coached over the last 10, 12, 15, 13 years that I've been coaching, and I codified it. I made it into something, whereas it's not just the woo-woo, which is important to get that, which is really the feelings, but it's also the practical steps you can take to make the changes. And I put
Right.
in the book and the cards.
I think that's wonderful. That's one. And I'm someone that uses cards every day. And I read not just the words, but I read the pictures. What's the picture trying to tell me?
Right.
So
My cards don't have too many pictures on them, but If you don't mind, I'll pull one card out just to go over it and give you an
Absolutely.
idea.
I was going to ask that.
I want
Oh,
one
cool.
for me. No,
You got it.
pick me.
You got it. I'll do that. Let me read this card and then I'll have you pick one out. How's that?
Okay.
All right. So I want to talk about self-awareness for a minute, because so many people think they understand that they think they're self-aware.
Yeah.
But after they read this card and they really take it in, they realize maybe they're not, because there's a difference between being self-aware and self-conscious.
Sure.
All right.
I love that.
So let me read this card to you.
Okay.
Self-awareness, self-consciousness comes from a place of negative energy, guilt, conflict, and doubt. Self-conscious is more outward directed. It's being more concerned about what others are thinking of you and how the situation is going to affect you. You probably react to uncomfortable situations instead of respond. When you're self-conscious, you're questioning your decisions, you're second-guessing yourself, allowing other people's opinions and judgments to sway your own judgment. Self-consciousness comes from a mindset of lack, complaining, and blaming. Self-awareness, here I am covering myself, comes from a place of positive energy, acceptance, contentment, self-assuredness. Self-awareness is more inward-facing. You have an accurate and realistic understanding of how you are responding to situations and how you feel about things. It enables you to approach interactions and circumstances from a more balanced, richer stance. Self-awareness comes from a mindset of abundance, taking responsibility, and gratitude.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Self-consciousness is ego-driven. Self-awareness is humility-driven.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, Nicole, you want to pick a number between
Yeah.
one
How many cards are there?
between 1 and 33?
I 33 came into my mind before you ever said that.
Okay. Well, I think both of you ladies know this concept called aim smart.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what 33 is. It breaks down the aim and the smart. Aim, A, acceptable. What's the acceptable minimum? Ideal. What's ideal? Middle. What's in the middle? Realistic stretch. So what are we talking about? We're talking about goal setting, right? Aim smart is goal setting. I should have started that. Once you have the goal to aim for, follow the SMART process. S, specific. M, measurable. A, achievable. R, reasonable. T, time oriented. And then you work with the card. There's a little more on it, but that's basic. That's the basics of the card. You both know that being in the coaching world, it's a great concept to utilize. Glenda, you want to pick a card?
Sure. Give me 10.
That was quick, Glenda.
All right. So
I'm
let
a
me ask you a
decisive
question,
one. I
ladies.
can't help it.
Let me ask you a question. I know when my kids were in school, the firemen would come to school and teach them about fire safety. And they would teach them 3 words to remember in a fire.
Yep.
You remember what the 3 words are?
I do. Stop, drop, and roll.
Stop, drop, and roll. So one of my big issues was that I told you I reacted to everything. So I had to learn something on how not to react anymore. So I took stop, drop, and roll and changed it to stop, think, and respond.
Mm,
Right?
I like that.
And Glenda, the card you picked was stop. Proper communication and listening skills are key. Create proper communications and listening skills so you can gain control in the moment. Disconnect from the triggers so you can listen. Change the way you communicate. Gain control of your emotions in the moment. Stop yourself from getting so upset that you're about to get into an argument. Say to yourself, is this the proper way to communicate my thoughts?
Interesting.
And then that leads to the think and the respond parts of it as well.
And it's so important because I have learned through my life, and my kids were very great teachers for me for this, and that that I do at this point in time in my life, but in those years I didn't. And my kids were my greatest teachers of saying, like, Mommy, why do you always yell? And that gave me that. I remember the one time my son said that to me, and I think that was the pivotal point when I switched over and I stopped. And from that point on, when things happen, I pull back because I need, like it's part of my thing is when things go wrong in my life, my friends will know that I won't be reaching out. When I come inward, it's because I need to digest what's happening. I need to figure out for myself because I'm not one to listen to everybody else's advice. I need to do my own soul searching, do my own research, whatever. I need to digest the particular situation before I can reach out or respond or anything. And that's probably one of the greatest lessons that I think that I've learned through my life.
Right.
And so, as some people reach out and they call everybody to let everybody know, I'm the total opposite of that.
But you know what? It's interesting that you pulled that card because that's who you used to be.
Yeah, that was me years ago.
Right. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
many years ago. And it's
Me
such an
too.
important thing in all of our lives. When people say things to us like that triggers us, we have to learn that we need to stop. And when we can think of where things are coming from, just like the feeling, allowing your feelings to heal from things. If you understand where things are coming from, you can actually forgive a lot easier.
Yes, yes, you can. And one of the other things I talk about in my course is building your emotional strength, right? Because I had no emotional strength. My emotion was, shoot first and ask questions later. The problem with that is when you shoot first, you kill everybody. So you can't ask any questions because they're all dead. Even metaphorically, they're dead because they don't want to talk to you. You just cut their head off.
Yeah.
So,
Very true.
so building the emotional strength for me is first, let yourself feel the emotion, accept it, listen to your heart, listen to your emotions. And then the second thing is figure out what those feelings are, because emotions and feelings are the same, but they're different.
Yeah.
The feelings is the deeper in of what the emotion is. And then you got to figure out what's going on and figure out, why am I feeling this? Question yourself, even like to the point of, going on trial, being the prosecuting attorney, and you're on the witness end. Why are you feeling this? And then take some action, engage in change and take action. And by doing that, you build up your muscle memory, so that next time you don't react the same way you did the last time.
And look at what you perceive it to be.
Yeah.
That's all part of and that's part of growing in our lives, right?
Yep.
So it's, if we can't sit back and look at ourselves and try to figure out why we react to things and how can we respond differently, because really that's the being quiet allows us time to figure out how we should be responding.
Yep.
And sometimes
Exactly.
we come out with something and we think to ourselves, and maybe you get angry, but then you step back for a minute and say, no, what if? And you come with a different, looking at it at a different angle, you really can come away with responding with a lot more kindness and understanding.
Right. Absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that, because in that stop, think, and respond, card number 13, I call it a scorecard, because I know the first time I teach this to somebody, I coach to somebody, they're going to get it wrong. And the second time and the third time. But can they build on it? Can they learn from what they did? So the scorecard says, okay, so you didn't do it right. But the next day, if you look back over it and look at what I did and how could I do it better, and maybe even calling the person that you reacted to and apologizing without looking for anything back. Now you're starting to understand the power of responding instead of reacting.
And that's a really important point that we have to say to people, especially if you've gone through a divorce and you're looking to restart your life again. Everybody will blame it's that person. They did everything. And what we have to realize, that even if you've had somebody who has cheated on you and lied and all the rest, you still had a part in that relationship. You still had something that caused the breakdown.
Right.
And that's
Absolutely.
taking responsibility, so that you can learn from that and grow from that, so you can change from it, which is the most important point of it all.
Exactly right. As a matter of fact, the whole thing of the stop, think, and respond goes back to while I was in coaching training, I was also going through the divorce. And
Mm.
my ex would call me up. We still weren't ex. We were still going through the whole thing. And she would call me up and she would say something that before that, I don't think I recognized was a trigger. But now that I was starting to become more aware, I wasn't self-aware yet. I was aware.
Yeah.
She would say, I don't want to fight, but now in my head, what
But
I heard was, let's get ready to rumble.
The but is your key.
Right. No, I don't want to fight. Right. And I would she'd tell me what it is and I would lose it. And she'd say, but I told you I didn't want to fight. So I all of a sudden became the bad guy. So what did I do? I actually went the entirely different way until I figured out how to get to the middle. She'd say that and I go, okay. And I'd hang up on her. And she says, what the hell did you do? I said, well, you didn't want to fight. So I hung up. And I started to realize that that was a trigger. That was a hot button for me. And I needed to condition myself and subconsciously condition her like Pavlov's dog to cut the wires of saying, I don't want to fight, but.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that started to stop, think, and respond.
Wow.
brilliant.
So I can give her credit for that.
Good for
Anyways,
you.
these days, I have a great relationship with my ex. We have 4 children, 8 grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
She's married again. I'm married again. She lives an hour away. It's a little difficult for me to see my youngest, but we make it work.
And that's really what it is all part of, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, life is just really too short, and we have to learn in any ways that we can bring happiness unto ourselves by, you know, just like you're saying, having given away that triggers, learning how we can do so we can adapt our lives so that we aren't triggered by those things.
Right.
That's part of the entire growing spirit. So
100%.
good for you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sometimes I wish I had learned this so many years ago. You know, I just sit there and I'm like, why did you have to wait? But you know, regardless, the fact that we have learned it, the fact that we know how to adjust or pivot, we know what triggers us and how to get rid of it. I think, you know, anybody can benefit from coaching. Anybody. You know, you don't know what you don't know until you've gone through all of this. And then you meet someone or you talk to someone that's a coach and you're like, why didn't I know this 5-10 years ago?
Right.
So,
Right. It's so funny because I call myself Martin 2.0 and I tell my ex-wife, my new wife, you never knew Martin 1.0. Lucky you.
But it's true. And it's so important that, you know, just saying that I saw many years ago because I had a very negative mom. You know, God bless her. I understand why she was the way she was, which actually helped me to grow as well. But from her negativity, I saw a lot of things. I saw that she attracted more negativity because she was so negative.
Yeah.
And I knew at an early age that I didn't want to be like that.
Yeah, that's the law of attraction.
That's right.
Yeah.
But in those days, I didn't know what the law of attraction was.
No, nobody did.
I just saw things that were happening, and
Right.
she was attracting that. And from that, I learned. So through my first divorce, when my ex wanted to continuously go, I was like, do what you want to do, but I'm not going down that aisle, you know, like that's poison. And it is. It's what people don't realize. When you keep that anger into you, it actually hurts you. And I saw it happening. You know, my ex lived a very horrendous life of a lot of health problems. He has since died, but watching him dying, what he went through was horrendous.
Yeah.
And that was because of all the anger that he decided to hold and to constantly spew out. So if you can release that anger, those triggers, those things, you are actually doing yourself, like it's the best thing you can do for your health. Never mind just the exercise and the eating right. it's just releasing some of those angers that you have towards people because of what you think that you've been through that somebody else has caused you.
Agreed. Agreed. Well said. Well said. And it's so true. The more you hold in, it has an effect on your body, on your physical body, the stress
Oh,
levels, the cortisol, all those things that happen within your body. It's just, you could end up with ulcers. You could end up with so many things because you think it's all in the head, but it's not.
it's
It
not.
goes through
It's
the
in
entire
the
body.
body.
Yeah.
It
It
destroys
is.
the organs. It destroys everything in our body. So, living a life where you learning that you can adapt and change your life can change everything about your entire world and your
Right.
relationships on top of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
What a great
No,
conversation.
and
It's a
it
thing that
is. It is. And yeah, and there's so much knowledge and so much impact just in what we've been talking about that it could help anybody, even anyone who has been coached. A lot of people don't know about the impact that the negativity has on the body, and it physically makes you sick.
It does.
I
Yeah.
truly saw my mother die from it,
Mhm.
from not forgiving. It ate at her and ate at her and ate at her
Hmm.
until she died.
Wow.
and that's other reasons of other things that come, the cancers, even did the dementias and things like that,
Yes,
because you're putting your body under such extreme pressure of that. It's not living a life where you can have the enjoyment of things and see people on the lighter side of things. You
Right.
know, we got to get to a point in life where we have to understand that everybody screws up. If we only knew what we know now, if we only knew that 20 years ago, we would be all so different. But part of life is learning from the lessons of the things that we have done, which are sometimes so wrong.
Right. 100%. Yeah. As we get older, we get wiser. I used to say, as I got older, my parents got smarter because I realized the things they were telling me when I was a teenager that I thought they were totally wrong. Looking back now, I was totally wrong.
exactly. Exactly. And then we start doing it to our kids because, it's just that pattern that goes down and it's crazy, and I look back, it's
Exactly.
like, well, I just think of it as it's on my timeline now. I was the creator of my timeline and I chose this. And so I'm just going with it. And I'm just very grateful that I know it now.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's good to look back, but only as a reflection, to
Exactly.
reflect as to what's going on. We
Yes.
can't live back there, but if we
No.
look back and say, what was it that worked? What was it that didn't work? And let me move forward so far.
And what can I learn from it and grow from it to help my
Exactly.
Absolutely.
life? So, Martin,
Exactly.
when you look back and you grow from your own life, what is some of the most, or one or two of the most important lessons that you have learned that you wish you would have known earlier?
Definitely number one is don't take anything personally.
Yeah.
Right. And number two has to be live a life of gratitude and everything else will fall into place. If you wake up every morning and are grateful for whatever's going on, whatever it is, no matter where you are in your life, there has got to be something you're grateful for. Build on that and move forward. Those are the top two for me.
I love it. And it's so important. Well, we're coming to the end of our show. Time always runs out too fast. These are such important lessons. And for those who are watching and maybe watching on the repeat, these are some of the most important lessons in life that we can share, all three of us, from being coaches. That if we only would have known maybe 20, 30 years ago, our lives would have been so different. But now, as now seasoned coaches, and we are now in our next the stage of life, we realize these things, and these are the things that we want to make sure that you learn. It's time to learn instead of repeating the mistakes that we have all done, sometimes too often. So, Nicole, what would you like to give us as our last words of wisdom here?
There's so much here that resonates with me today. It's like the conversation is right up my alley because of the forgiveness and everything. And you know, you talk about gratitude, and I wake up in gratitude every morning. But one of the things that also really changed my life was understanding that everything that happens to us or around us is neutral until we place our emotion on it. And so we need to know ourselves. We need to know what triggers us. We need to know the why. We need to know everything about our actions. And that way we can take responsibility for ourselves and move forward into, you know, and walking the path of emotional freedom and bringing joy, love, all those high vibrational feelings into us. And once you get those in your body, anything lower, because of the high vibration of the words and the feelings, all the lower stuff is vibrated out of your body. Your body's so brilliant, it takes care of that for you. So, you know, this has been just a beautiful conversation today, Martin. I'm so glad you are here and teaching us, and I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I've enjoyed every moment with both of you. Fantastic ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you also for being, for starting our year out on such a beautiful note. Some very important lessons that we all constantly need to remember, you know, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's being aware, being confident, all of these things is what it's all about, of living a better life. And that's what it's really for, you know, like, let's bring 2024 into a stronger year, a year where we can forgive, the year to let go. There's so much going on in our world, and it's not pretty out there what's going on. And we have to learn that we have to stop being so judgmental, and we have to sort of understand that we all are different in our own ways. And when we can appreciate people for who they are, for what they try, instead of already convicting them of what they did, it would be a very different world out there, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today on the first day back of Let's Get Real, for Let's Bring in a great 2024. Martin, thank you so much for joining us. It's just an absolute pleasure. You gave us some really important things that we all got to think of. And please remember, share us, love us, give us a little bit of feedback, and tell us, you know, what do you do to release your energies, to release and become the better person that you need to be. Thank you very much for joining us today. Bye for now.